Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back or welcome to My Money, My Purpose. I'm Stephanie, I'm the spender. And if you're new to this channel, we talk about our financial journeys. We incorporate wellness and mindset in building our wealth. So if that's something you're interested in, please subscribe to the channel. We would love to take you along with us. So today I'm going to be talking about a little bit of a hot take. If you've been following along with my journey, I've talked a lot about credit card debt and personal loan debt, basically how I racked up so much debt.
Cause I have $30,000 in credit card debt. When they call, I tell them I can't pay it back yet.
And I decided to take a proactive approach. So let's talk about it. So I recently partnered with a debt settlement company, and I wanted to talk about why I went this route, what events occurred leading up to this, and why it isn't for everyone. So the first event that occurred was the ratio of how much income I was earning compared to my expenses greatly tipped towards the deficit. I was working a full-time 40-hour-a-week job plus a part-time job on the weekends, and I got laid off of the part-time job simply because they eliminated the position. And all the while, my rent had increased quite significantly, so I was making less money and my rent increased. The second event leading up to this decision was simply unexpected moving expenses. What ultimately pushed me over the edge to making this decision was that I took out a high-interest personal loan that I was trying to use as a cushion for waiting until I received a pretty significant refund in the amount of $1,700. And my intention was to only use a portion of it and pay back the rest. And life just happens, and it didn't happen that way. So paying back this personal loan was basically eating up my entire paycheck weekly, on top of rent and all the other expenses that I had. So that is why I fell so behind the curve, and I desperately needed a different solution to this massive problem. First thing I want to talk about is the difference between debt consolidation and debt settlement. What is debt consolidation? It's basically a loan taken out to pay off all your other debt. So it eliminates 5 or 6 payments to 5 or 6 credit cards that you have, and it combines it to one payment. I had wanted to go this route, but I didn't qualify for such a big loan, so that's where debt settlement came into play. Debt settlement companies help you eliminate your debt quicker by creating a customized payment plan that suits your budget. Your debt specialist uses a proprietary calculation by taking your total debt and considering your income, expenses, and lifestyle or miscellaneous spending to come up with a monthly figure. Once your plan is ready and accepted, you pay your debt settlement company instead of your creditors. Your debt specialist will negotiate settlement amounts for you, cutting your debt with your creditors sometimes in half. Your money is deposited into a separate account that your debt specialist will use to allocate your creditors for you. All debt relief companies work a little bit differently, but I had the option to choose how aggressively I wanted to pay my debt off. I opted for 60 months or 5 years and only paying $132 weekly compared to $800 for that high interest loan. So that is my program contract. However, if you put additional deposits towards it, it will get you closer to offers and settlements, which will grant you a sooner graduation date. So as you can see, this is just an overview. It has the company National Debt Relief. It has the next deposit amount. Like I said, I'm paying $132 a week. Currently, I have $223.09 in my account balance, and the next payment is September 22nd. Milestone reached. We are actively working toward an offer and will contact you once we have an agreement ready for you to approve. See, that happened really quickly. So I only, like you have seen, I only have $223.09 in my balance, and they're already working towards a settlement with one of my creditors. That's awesome. They work super fast. So this is where you can make a one-time deposit. I highly encourage you to do that. Like it says, making a one-time deposit can help drastically reduce the length of your program term. A little extra now goes a long way later. This is where the juicy stuff occurs. So right now, these are all the creditors that are enrolled in my lump balance of my debt. Discover is at $3,787. Community Bank is at $1,170. Please keep in mind that the loan I took from With You Loans was only a $2,000 principal. It would have accumulated $8,000 in interest within a 12-month period. That is why it's at $10,000. This is the program summary. My start date was August 25th, 2023. I have 4 active creditors. I don't have any resolved creditors yet as of yet. My enrollment debt was $16,783.78, and that is also my active debt. And I don't currently have resolved debt as of yet, but my total estimated program payoff amount is $10,686.37, and my payoff date is February 25th, 2027. That is if I don't put any extra deposits towards this, but I have every intention on putting extra money towards it when I have it. As you can see, being enrolled in this program is eliminating my total debt by over $6,000. Pretty impressive. So let's talk about the pros of debt settlement. Similarly to debt consolidation, it is one lump sum. It is one payment towards your debt versus the multitude of creditors that you have to pay separately. 2, it cuts down more than half of your debt. Access to your online portal. On this portal, you can keep track of where you're at with your settlements and track how much money that you have been accruing. This is nice because rather than having to keep track of this and that, you just have one portal to track all of your creditors. You get to work with very professional specialists. They're very empathetic, and they work with you, and they're very thorough. Now for the cons. Because you stopped paying your creditors will hassle you. They will call you a bunch because they're trying to figure out where their money is. And different companies will have a different procedure. I'm currently working with National Debt Relief, and they advised me to answer the phone and to give the creditor the number of National Debt Relief because they will handle that for me. 2, your credit does plummet quite a bit, and it stays on your history for about 7 years. You really need to do your research and not get conned into a fraudulent company taking your money while your debt keeps increasing. You want to make sure you're working with a reputable source, especially when you're being reached out to. If you're sought after, definitely be on high alert that it could be a scam. You want to make note that once you settle, your credit cards that you're making settlements for will no longer be active. It doesn't fix your poor spending habits. Unfortunately, what happens is you'll go through this debt settlement process, and pretty quickly, you'll just receive more credit card offers in the mail, and if your mindset hasn't changed by then, you'll just apply and perhaps rack up more debt and then go through settlement again. And so you'll want to make sure that if you are ready for debt settlement, that your mind is right in your spending habits because the cycle can just keep continuing. So what are some reputable debt settlement companies? Well, I'm using National Debt Relief. I know that Freedom Debt Relief is also super reputable and they're great to work with. There's also Accredited Debt Relief. Now, as I said before, debt settlement is not for everyone. Not everyone qualifies for it, first of all. If you don't qualify for debt settlement, ask what your other options are. Ask them by how much more you need to qualify. I wouldn't recommend just applying for a personal loan to add to your debt in order to settle because that is risky. Being overwhelmed by your debt isn't reason enough to do that. The reason why I'm mentioning that is I'm asking myself now if that's something I would have done in the past, and I would say absolutely. If I was desperate enough, I would ask them, hey, well, how much more debt do I need to rack up before I qualify? Probably apply for a high interest personal loan and have that added to my running balance and try again. So is that something I would have done in the past? Absolutely. Do I recommend doing that now? Absolutely not. There are better ways, I promise. So while I do overall recommend debt settlement for certain people, I also have to talk about the risks associated with it. There is a potential for tax consequences. The IRS views any forgiven debt as taxable income if it exceeds $600. So if that's something you're not prepared for ahead of time, that can be very detrimental by the time tax season rolls around, and you may not want that. The other risk that this carries is negotiation problems. There's always a risk that creditors can reject the settlement offers they receive. However, debt specialists are experts in their field. They can always counteroffer. More often than not, they can counteroffer until a settlement is agreed upon. Sort of with that, there is always the risk of getting sued by creditors because they are after their money. Should that happen, I have lawyer protection. I pay an additional fee. And just in case I get sued by a creditor, I do have lawyer protection right at my fingertips. Now, what happens if a creditor doesn't accept a settlement offer? You are still responsible for that debt. So there is a risk in increased debt because you're still responsible for it, and interest keeps racking up and late fees will rack up. So there is always a chance that it isn't contributing to eliminating your debt because you are still responsible for the unpaid debt. There are alternatives to debt settlement, such as balance transfer, debt consolidation loan, as I was talking about, nonprofit credit counseling, and debt management programs. Debt management programs are different from debt settlement because they help you create a budget. They help you create a payment plan to repay your creditors, but they aren't there to settle your debt and cut that debt in half. They're just helping you along the process of paying your debt. Balance transfer is paying off a credit card by opening a new one with the intention of a lower interest rate, so you can save some money that way. Now, you might be wondering how these companies get paid. I was wondering that too. The fees for the settlement company are included in your monthly payment. The other question you might have, because I had it too, is why would these creditors be willing to accept settlements? First of all, they would finally get paid rather than just sitting on the built-up interest. And because your credit with them would be inactive, you're pretty much getting fired as a client, which, isn't the worst thing that could happen. It's sort of like the analogy that I like to use is if you've ever tried to sell a house or try to sell a car and there just isn't any movement on it, what do? You lower the price. So a lot of the creditors are willing to work with you by accepting a settlement offer because they do get paid finally. And then at the end of the day, they don't have to keep track of you anymore. They don't have to worry about you anymore. So it is a win-win situation after all because they do get paid. In conclusion, the question of this video is, do I recommend debt settlement for the average person? And I would say yes. I 100% recommend debt settlement to the average person, but only as a last resort. I would say that if you are able to pay off your debt without having to opt for the debt settlement, I would say go for that. Most likely, those options carry a lot fewer risks, and you have to do a risk to benefit analysis. To give you a little bit of context, so I was getting paid weekly, and I was taking home $840 to about $860 a week, and my one loan payment was $800 a week. So there was no room for me to pay anything else. I was at my wit's end with my debt, and so debt settlement for me was the only thing I qualified for. Debt settlement for me was my last resort. I have a lot of faith in the debt settlement company that I'm working with to advocate for me, to do my bidding for me, and I really believe that I will get all of the settlements that I need in order to eliminate my debt quicker.